My wife and I have been together for 15 years, and they were some of the best years of my life. When I met her, we were both in our late 20s and very focused on our careers. It was one of the most important things in our lives at the time, and I appreciated how ambitious she was. We started dating, and we both knew that no matter what, our personal success came first. A lot of people think that might not sound healthy, but we were both very independent, and we helped each other so much along the way. My wife had a bit of a health scare, which I won't go into details about due to privacy, but after that, she wanted to slow down and appreciate life over work. She told me that she wanted a child, and I thought it was a good idea as well. When she got pregnant, she quit her job, and I was left being the sole provider for our growing family. I made good money, but being the only provider put a lot more stress on me and my work than what had previously been there. Over the course of 15 years, we had 3 children and created a wonderful life together. Throughout all of these years, there was one small hitch in our relationship: her best friend. They had been friends since they were in grade school. He was my wife's oldest friend. They knew each other better than anyone else on earth, and they cared deeply for each other. It was difficult for me to understand their friendship because I always thought that he had more than platonic feelings for my wife. I just got a sense from him that he had always been waiting for her to see that he was standing right in front of her. He had been single for the majority of our marriage. He spent years as a playboy with relationships, never lasting more than 6 months. My wife was always trying to set him up with her friends, but he never seemed to want to settle down. Then one day, he meets a month when he proposed to her. My wife was completely shocked by the news. She was happy, but she was surprised. She kept questioning him about whether or not he knew for sure she was the one for him. Honestly, at one point I felt like his love life had taken up a significant part of my wife and I's conversations. So I mentioned not wanting to talk about it anymore. My wife was annoyed with me for saying that because he was her best friend and she wanted to talk about it. I explained that it made me uncomfortable that she was taking up such a big part of his life in regard to his romantic relationships. She thought I was kind of crazy for thinking that way. We argued about their relationship, and I ended up sleeping on the couch that night. The following day, she told me that I had nothing to worry about with their relationship. He was her oldest friend and nothing more than that. I accepted what she said and moved on. She never gave me any reason to believe anything else, and I had let my own insecurities get the best of me. She hadn't known the fiancé very well, so she stepped in to help with some of the wedding planning. It was something she had worked with before she quit her job, so she knew a lot of ins and outs of the industry. At least once a week when she would come home after helping the fiancé, she would complain about how much she didn't like her. She was constantly telling me about how she thought their relationship wasn't going to last, and she wanted to try and talk to her friend about it because she didn't think they were a good fit. In hindsight, she was very jealous. I think she realized her friend was going to be less interested in her, so she didn't like the fiancé. As the date for the wedding drew near, she spent more time with her friend and fiancé helping them prep for it. I saw her less and less and I was getting frustrated. Not to sound like some chauvinist, but I worked between 8 to 10 hours a day, and a lot of times I had to take work home with me to finish up as well. While she was planning the wedding, I was coming home from work and cooking dinner, then cleaning up the mess while she was out. For the past 15 years, she had been doing all of that. I was getting very exhausted because I felt like I was working a lot, and then coming home and taking care of the house. One night my wife and the fiancé were in our living room looking through some magazines and putting together some ideas. Her friend was there, somewhat disinterested in everything that was happening, though I could see that he was peeking over at my wife quite frequently. I was used to him looking at her. That was one of the main reasons I suspected he had feelings for her to begin with. But the fact that he was still staring at her longingly while he was engaged was rubbing me the wrong way. A couple of days later, my wife told me that she was going over to their house to help with some preparations. About an hour after she told me she left, the fiancé knocked on my door and told me that she had left a pair of sunglasses in our living room. I told her that I wished she'd have just let us know so my wife could have brought it over to her house that afternoon. She then informed me that my wife was not at her house. We didn't know where she was. I asked her about where her fiancé was, and she told me that he was at the office working. It was a Saturday, and over the years that I'd known him, he had never been one to go above and beyond and show up for work on Saturday. Right away, I believed that my wife lied to me about planning the wedding to go spend time with him. I explained that to the fiancé, and she was enraged when I told her that. She thought the idea that my wife and her fiancé were together was preposterous. I was able to convince her to join me while we went to look for them. Thankfully, with our phone plan, we had a family GPS tracker installed, so I was able to find out where she was. The GPS tracker took us to an old strip mall where most of the buildings had been vacated decades before. We saw both of their cars in the parking lot and slowly approached them. When we drove up closer to my wife's van, we saw her and her friend inside having sex. They didn't notice us until I knocked on the window, and they both jumped and tried to cover themselves. The fiancée opened the door as soon as she heard the lock click and nearly dragged my wife out by her hair. I hadn't been expecting her to physically assault anyone, so I was able to separate them and get my wife away from her. My wife and her friend tried to explain what happened to us. They said that they just needed to figure out if there was anything there before he got married. I suppose she forgot about how she had been married to me for 15 years. If there had been something with him, did she plan on just leaving me and the children? All I knew was that she wouldn't have to worry about that anymore because I was going to be leaving her. The fiancé yelled at my wife's friend and called him just about every name in the book before throwing her ring in his face. I told my wife that I wanted her to go and stay with her parents while we figured everything out. I met with a lawyer as soon as I could because I knew we were going to have a difficult divorce battle ahead of us. When we got married, we signed a prenuptial agreement to keep all of our assets separate from each other. But when my wife quit her job, that changed a lot of things. Because she cheated, I didn't want to give her anything. But I was worried I was going to have to pay her spousal support. My attorney was amazing, and they were able to get me out of doing that. Unfortunately, my wife was able to keep the house. That didn't matter too much to me because I didn't want any reminders of the time she might have spent with her friend in the house. Even though she got the house, she ended up having to sell it for a portion of what was paid for it because she couldn't afford to upkeep it on her own. She ended up having to get a job as well, and I knew she was unhappy about that after spending years out of the field. We now have joint custody of our children, and they have a lot of resentment toward their mother for destroying their family. I don't want them growing up hating their mother just because of what she did to me. So I try to swallow my pride as much as I can, but sometimes it's hard. She tried to date her friend after everything was finished, but they both realized there really wasn't anything there. After sleeping with each other, they weren't even able to get back to being friends. They ended up no longer speaking to each other. Right now, I'm just focused on reestablishing a life for myself with my children. I'm not too worried about dating. OP, I'm so sorry to hear that you had to go through all of that. You spent 15 years of your life dedicated to someone else who was very quick to throw it all away. It's such a shame that she showed her true colors to you so late into the relationship. Hearing about how close she was to her friend was somewhat of a red flag. That's not to say that men and women cannot be friends with each other, but in a lot of cases, you should trust your gut when you believe there are feelings there. It definitely sounds like he was having a hard time with relationships because he had feelings for your wife. Instead of shutting you down when you questioned it, your wife should have listened to what you said and done something to assure you they were just platonic. On top of that, it definitely does sound like your wife was jealous of the fiancé. Why else would she have disliked her more than all of the other women? As soon as her friend decided he wanted to be happy focusing on someone else, she decided that she did have feelings for him after all and couldn't let him be happy. I know having a divorce after all this time can be difficult too, but it sounds like you have a good head on your shoulders and you're focused on the important stuff. I hope you and your children can recover from all of this and live a happy life in the future. Now let's get into our second story for today. I, 24 male, and my girlfriend, 24 female, had known each other for years before we both confessed our feelings to each other and started dating. We were in the same friend group in college, and ever since I met her I had feelings for her, but I was too nervous to come out and tell her about them. She actually ended up drunk messaging me one day telling me that she thought I was cute and funny, and she had a little bit of a crush on me. I made sure to wait until she was sober to respond, so I could make sure she was sure about what she was saying. We have been together ever since my sophomore year of college. All of our friends thought we were a great couple. We were even voted as the best couple in our senior yearbook. It felt validating to have other people look at our relationship as something they wanted to work toward in their own lives. After college, we both moved in together and got jobs to start our lives with. I felt like our relationship was thriving for a long time. About 4 years into our relationship, my girlfriend came to me and told me that she thought she might be bisexual. I'm a very progressive person, so I didn't think much about it. I told her that I was there for her to talk to if she needed an ear, and I was there for her when she told her family. Her family wasn't the most understanding at first, but they eventually came around. After a conversation, we discussed what her sexuality looked like in our relationship. I have a lot of friends in the LGBT community, and I've heard a lot about the bisexual erasure that has happened within a lot of media and different communities. I never wanted her to feel like she was missing a part of herself by being in a relationship with a man. She assured me that she didn't feel that way at all. Because she was bisexual, she was happy being in a relationship with me, but with her sexuality, that meant that she was just attracted to women also. A few months passed since we had that conversation, and everything was as normal as it ever was with us. Her revelation didn't have much of an impact on our relationship, though I was doing what I could to educate myself to make sure she was feeling seen and heard in the relationship. My girlfriend started to withdraw herself from me, and I was worried that there was something I was doing that was wrong, so I asked her about it. She told me that there was nothing that I was doing, but she was feeling a little off in general. She asked for a little bit of space, and I gave it to her. She stayed with her parents for the weekend, and I stayed home and waited for her to come back. She needed space, so I wasn't texting her and calling her or anything like that. I waited for her to respond to me before I did anything. When she came back, she was back to her old self. I was happy to see that that little bit of space was enough to help her overcome what she was going through. I asked her about it the day she came back, and she told me that she was just not feeling like herself and needing some time to recuperate from that. I didn't question it any more than that. A few weeks passed, and she was once again withdrawing herself from me. I didn't know what was going on, but if it was something to do with her mental health, I thought that she might need some help or someone to talk to, so I asked her about it again. She seemed surprised by what I was saying, as if she hadn't even realized she was acting a certain way. She just told me not to worry about it. She stayed like that for about a month. My mom came into town, and I took her out to lunch while my girlfriend ended up staying behind at the apartment. She asked me about what was going on with my girlfriend, and I explained everything to her. My mom was immediately concerned about it, but not for the same reasons I was. When I was young, my father cheated on my mother, and she never quite recovered from that. When I explained what happened, my mom immediately associated it with how my father acted while he was having an affair. As soon as she said that, I rejected the idea. There was no way my girlfriend would cheat on me. We had an incredible relationship, and I was always there for her when she needed me. There was no chance that she was cheating. My mom told me that she couldn't be sure either, but it was something that I should keep my eyes open for just in case. She even gave me some tips on how to try and catch her if she was. I went home somewhat annoyed by the conversation that I had with my mother, but I couldn't get it out of my head. The more I thought about what she said, the more I realized there might be some merit to it. Even if she wasn't cheating, there very well could have been something that she was hiding from me. I didn't know how to ask my girlfriend about it. If there was something that she was going through, asking her if she was cheating on me may only make things worse. Later that night, we both laid down to go to bed, and I couldn't fall asleep. After I heard my girlfriend snoring beside me, I snuck around her side of the bed and grabbed her phone to look through it. I felt guilty while I was pulling it off the charger. Neither of us had ever done anything like that before, but it was almost compulsive. The idea that my partner might be cheating on me had completely taken over my mind, and I couldn't think about anything else. I stepped out of the room and looked through her phone, searching for any signs that she might be having an affair. I found those signs in droves. One of the first things that I noticed was that in one of her folders she had the Hinge app downloaded. Of course, I went on there, and I looked through the app, where I saw that she had been matched with several women. I looked through some of the messages, and one stood out in particular. There was a woman that she matched with whom they had both spoken about how they were in similar situations. They realized that they were attracted to women while they were in relationships with men, and they felt like they needed to explore that attraction. They both admitted to being in committed monogamous relationships, while also setting up a time to hook up. The first time that they hooked up together was when my girlfriend wanted to spend time at her parents' house when she told me she needed time apart. I was upset to learn that she had lied to me about what she was going through and where she was going so she could sleep with another person. According to the messages, they both enjoyed their time together and planned to continue their relationship. I found countless messages where they had been flirting and exchanging sexual messages with each other. I screenshotted all of the information that I found, and sent the information to myself before deleting it. I knew right away that I was going to be ending things with my girlfriend. It didn't matter to me that she was exploring her new identity. We were in a committed relationship, and she cheated on me with someone else. The next day, she told me that she was going to go to her parents' house again. She said that she agreed with me and thought that she wasn't acting like herself, so she thought it would be good to have some time alone again. I just nodded my head and said that sounded like a good idea. When she left, I followed her. She went to a motel, and shortly after the other girl joined her there. I was able to get a couple of pictures of them kissing in the doorway kissing, but everything else happened behind closed doors. I assumed that if she was taking the entire weekend to go back home with her parents, she would be spending the weekend with that girl. So I reached out to her boyfriend. I told him about what happened and what I saw, and shortly after he called me. He didn't want to believe what I had to say, but I assured him that what I saw was true and that they were having an affair. We agreed to meet up at the hotel the following day. We were going to surprise them at the hotel and end everything with them. When he arrived, I knocked on the door and heard a lot of shuffling on the other end. My girlfriend opened it with a smile, but when she saw who was behind the door, it quickly faded away. The other girl was in the room lounging on the bed. Her jaw dropped when she saw her boyfriend standing at the door. They tried to explain what they were doing there, but I stopped them and told them that we knew everything that was happening. I broke up with my girlfriend right away and told her that I wanted her out of the apartment. The other man told his girlfriend that he wanted her to move out of his house and that he wanted nothing to do with her. I felt even worse when he asked for a ring back from her. I had no idea they were engaged. I walked away to go to my car, and my girlfriend chased behind me trying to apologize for what happened. I told her I didn't want to hear anything that she had to say, but she tried to tell me that it wasn't cheating because it was with a woman. It didn't make any sense why that would be the excuse she gave. She was having sex with another person. I didn't care that it was a woman. I didn't think it was hot that she was sneaking around behind my back. She was my girlfriend and I loved her, and she betrayed me. Honestly, I was offended that she would think I would be okay with it because it was a woman. She didn't know me at all, and that was clear. I just drove away and told her one last time that I wanted her out of the apartment. She ended up having to move back home with her parents, who were very surprised that she had cheated on me to begin with, and even more so that it was with a woman. I felt bad that she was going to have to live with people who weren't necessarily the most accepting of who she was, but at the same time, I didn't want to think too much about her. I just can't understand why she wouldn't talk to me about what she was feeling. Throughout the entirety of our relationship, I had gone out of my way to make her feel understood and heard, and she still took advantage of our relationship and betrayed my trust. OP, I'm so sorry you had to go through something like this. It does sound like you did everything you could to make your girlfriend feel comforted and safe, and she threw it all away. You did the best that you could to comfort her when you thought she was going through something, and she took advantage of that to lie about where she was going so she could have an affair. I know there are a lot of people who fetishize women in relationships with other women, but regardless of that, she still cheated on you. Cheating is cheating, and it doesn't matter who it was if you took someone's trust in you and broke it. This is an interesting case because I can understand how she might have felt like she was missing something by not exploring her identity more, but that's something that could have been discussed with you. Maybe even in this situation, it would have been better for her to break up with you and take some time to herself to explore before settling down, but it seems like she wanted the best of both worlds. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below